Now, a terrible side effect of the pandemic, not nearly discussed often enough, is the sharp rise in domestic violence. Israeli media counting a surge of at least 300%, many cases of which have ended in murder. But the recent murder of Diana Raz at the hands of her husband is now especially catching the attention of Israeli authorities. This as Raz had herself inspired thousands of women to escape their own abusive environments.
דיאנה הייתה מקור השראה להרבה מאוד נשים, ואנחנו נמצה את הדין עם הרוצח שלה ונפעל ביד קשה כדי למגר תופעה בלתי נסבלת זאת. אנחנו נעשה כל מאמץ כדי להבטיח את שלומה וביטחונה של כל אישה ואישה בישראל.
Now here now to discuss the terrible and seemingly growing phenomenon is practicing psychologist Kamila Forkosh Lavan. Kamila, thanks so much for being with us. Let's start off.
Thank you.
Who is Diana Raz?
So she is actually a very prominent member of the community. She is a social worker and she worked, ironically, she worked with other women that were in difficult situations, family abuse and things like that. The whole story is just really, really sad.
How does a woman who has herself been in an abusive relationship in the past, escaped and helped other women, as you've said, end up in such a tragic situation like this?
It's a wonderful question, and I'm happy you're asking it because, as you know, I speak on this topic quite often, and often there is also a lot of backlash. People assume that, in order to be in an abusive relationship, you're tied to a bed and black and blue marks everywhere. And that's not true. I mean, sometimes it's also unfortunately true, but it's not always true. Often the signs are not so visible. People show up at birthdays, at parties, they go out, but there are micro expressions of danger that only within the family they know, like, okay, you misbehaved, so to speak, and you know that you're going to go home and you will, basically relive the hell again while still smiling around people. So this is a very insidious situation. And another thing is that the judgment that was very surprising also, especially in this case, like how is it possible, look, psychology and all that kind of stuff doesn't work, because how is it possible, exactly what you just asked, that someone that actually worked within the field was also a victim. So again, huge misunderstanding of the whole situation, and that's the whole point. The point is that's very insidious and it's emotional. It's an emotional trap. It has nothing to do with intelligence or education. You can be a professor in the university and still go home basically to relive the hell every day, right? So that's the whole point. And I think that we need a systematic change, a cultural change and awareness in order to actually fix the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I want to stay on this because the husband, the suspected murderer, is a police officer himself, and he turned himself over to the authorities immediately after the murder, and he sent his 3 kids to their grandparents, saying that he was never violent with Diana and that this just happened. Again, things like this don't typically just happen. So what is the psychology behind a tragedy like this? What are some of the things that maybe were missed?
So yes, usually unless there's some psychotic break, which isn't that, the percentages of that is not so high, yes, they don't just happen. Often it starts slowly. It starts with the verbal abuse. It starts with the little smirks. It starts with emotional like put downs. Sometimes it involves financial and sexual abuse, yes. But all of that, you have to understand that if at the wedding day he would beat her up, she would leave. It doesn't work that way. Sure. It's always very, very slow, and it's very, very systematic, and it increases and escalates to the point where the self-esteem of the victim basically is being torn down very, very slowly. They start to fear. They feel they do not have any options to leave. In this case, he's also a policeman. So like, let's say even if she would reach out somewhere and try to hide, she realizes that it would be much more difficult because, again, he has access, not like regular people. He would probably be able to find her. So it makes it very, very difficult to leave and reach out. Another problem is that often people...
So this is, yeah, I mean, this is a terrible situation. I just want to end on telling everybody out there that, as you said, this is a slow-growing issue. And please, if you see any sort of red signs, reach out. There is help available. Kamila, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.